Welcome, friends, to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from that police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, today we're going to talk about the jail life for this this jail inmate waiting extradition, Bryan Kohberger. But before we get into it, we want to say happy, healthy New Year to each and every one of you. Ed, how was your New Year's Eve? Did you stay up late?
Yeah, watched the ball drop, watched a few of the musical acts on television, and then passed out.
There you go. Yeah, I found myself on the couch at 3:30 in the morning. I didn't know where I was, and I got upstairs and I went to bed. So happy New Year to all of the Crime Time with DutyRon family and community here. I hope each and every one of you had a great evening. And if you were home alone like I was on the couch, we were together, so to speak. So listen, tonight we're going to bring to you, and for those of you joining from Police Off the Cuff, welcome. Tonight we're going to bring to you what the conditions are like, or what it's going to be like for this perp who is in custody. He's innocent until proven guilty, as we know. What the day-to-day until he has his extradition hearing, which we now know he will waive his extradition. So in other words, he will not fight that process on Tuesday. I believe it's the 3rd of January. Courts are closed tomorrow. So Tuesday, he will be brought before a judge in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and he will be then extradited. They'll have a period of time which they deem reasonable. It's usually either 2 weeks or 30 days. In our instances, we always were asked to hurry up and come and get the inmate. That was the request from corrections. But tonight, Ed and I have a corrections specialist. He's an executive with, and he has his own YouTube channel and a podcast called Tier Talk. Anthony Gangi, you guys know him, and Connie, Eileen. She's always great to be on Crime Time with DutyRon with us, but she's not available tonight. But Anthony is going to be joining us. But we want to play this little piece before we bring Anthony on. So we're going to have a ton of questions from you guys. And I got to tell you, Ed, I'm going to ask you to man the DutyRon.com website for just a couple of days and see how many questions come in like I do. And I'm just kidding, Ed. But we got so many questions about this one. Hey, Ed, DutyRon, what's this guy's life going to be like in prison? Why was he wearing a bulletproof vest, which we know is not a bulletproof vest? What was that clothing he was wearing? We're going to get those answers to those questions from a corrections professional. And thank you, B3V3R7Y. That's a tongue twister. Happy New Year, DutyRon and Ed. Thank you for that.
Sounds like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. All right. This is from Police Off the Cuff from earlier. This is a news clip I thought was important. There's Bill, Phil, and Mike Geary.
Go. CNN has learned that Brian Kohberger's father was with him as he drove cross-country from Washington State to Pennsylvania. Police were tracking him the entire time. The suspect's lawyer speaking to CNN about the 4 murder counts his client is facing.
He's doing okay. He's shocked a little bit. Obviously, he's calm right now. We don't really know much about the case.
Now, your client is highly educated, very intelligent. He has to appreciate the seriousness of what is happening right now.
Oh, absolutely. He is very intelligent. In my hour conversation with him, that comes off. I can tell that. And he understands where we are right now.
Investigators honed in on Kohberger by tracking his car and through DNA evidence, according to law enforcement sources. CNN's Veronica Miracle has more on the relief that many are feeling in Idaho.
So that's the part that I wanted to play, Ed. So now this is going to start a firestorm on with the online sleuths. And you know what that firestorm is going to be. Did the father know that the son murdered 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho? We just got to get ready for this because it's happening. I'm sure. again, everyone's going to question, why did the father go out there? And as you and I spoke about before we went live, he is claiming that this was a planned trip from Pennsylvania to Washington to take a drive all the way back. And I think they got back here somewhere around mid-December, December 16th-ish, day or two. Please don't hold me to those dates. But they were back here in mid-December, and he was going about his daily life like nothing was happening.
Yeah, and unbeknownst to him, he was being tracked the entire time.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on Pops going out to Washington and taking a ride back with his son?
You know, I've done things like that for my son when he was in school or when he was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not unheard of. You know, where hey, I got this cross country trip. You know, father son, you know, get together and drive across country together, sharing the drive. The father allegedly made a press statement stating that this was a planned event, that this was planned well in advance of this incident. To the extent that that's true, the investigation will bear that out.
Yeah, and that's what we got to go with, and I would encourage people to not read too far into it, because we are going to get a look eventually at the probable cause affidavit. We heard the county prosecutor, the Latah County prosecutor. He said, "Hey, we're gonna make that available to you guys. It's probably going to be heavily redacted, but we're still going to get an idea of what these charges, why these charges were levied against them, and I'm not sure how much information we're going to get before these things go away." Kitchen Gadget Queen, thank you for becoming a channel member, and Laura, thank you for becoming a new member. We do appreciate it. Listen, I know you guys have so many questions. How quickly will this guy get back? What kind of treatment is he going to get? Is he going to have his vegan food in prison? And I know a lot of you might say, well, DutyRon, who cares what he gets in prison? I just want to, as Ed and I always do, we just want to educate you guys. So we go straight to the correction professionals. And what happens behind the walls with the correction officers across our great nation is nothing shy of miraculous. What they do day in and day out is these men and women are heroes, because they're dealing with the worst of the worst. And my next guest is a corrections executive. Anthony Gangi has got over close to 20 years, I believe, in the corrections business. He'll correct me when he comes in. But this guy is walking the walk and talking the talk behind the walls. Anthony, thanks for being here, brother.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having over 20 years now.
Over. I knew it.
You knew it. Come on. We just
I know. I got to break your chops every once in a while. That's the brotherhood that we have.
Yeah. And Ron, it's an honor to be back on with yourself, your great guest, Ed as well. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come back on again.
Yeah, Anthony, we both appreciate coming on here with us. This case, this quadruple homicide in Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, small community, college-driven, university-driven, obviously, right? It's the heartbeat of that community. Everybody was shaken for 6 going on 7 weeks. We now have this arrest that broke on Friday, and this perpetrator who stands allegedly accused of these 4 murders is being held in that Monroe County jail, which, as we all know, county jails are for the folks who get locked up and do, short periods, short stints, as they call it, right? Is that correct lingo? Mm-hmm. So they do their short stints there. And for those that get the sentence, they get, 5-10 years, they get sent up to a state prison. I wanted to go with you, Anthony, first. Could you tell the audience a little bit about your experience and what your background is before we go into this process of what happened to this guy on Friday?
Yeah, I'd be honored. Okay, so I have about 20 years in the corrections profession. I started my career as an officer at a female facility. I was an officer for about 8 or 9 years. And then I worked my way into being a sergeant, where I went to, first time I worked with men, and that was at a maximum security facility. And then about 12 years in, I got promoted to administrative, which at this point, I begin to see the overall functions of of a full operational facility. Again, as an officer and a sergeant, you see the safety and security side. That is pretty much your defined function. But as you move up to the administrative level, you oversee all functions that relate to each inmate. Basically, you see the total needs of what has to be met. And then now I'm at a maximum security facility, but one more step higher, and that's at the associate administrative level. And again, just a high level function, one away from running a complete house, doing it on my own. But yeah, 20 years and love it. Love it.
Impressive. So as I said in the opening, working behind a wall is not an easy task. You got to deal with these folks on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I wanted you quickly to walk our audience through, because they're asking, these questions are coming in, multiple questions about, hey, what happens with this guy? We know it's not, he's not arrested on these charges. He's being held on these outstanding warrants for another authority. So when the local PD goes with the feds and the folks from Idaho, and they do this warrant hit, and Ed and I know all about this stuff, they're going in there with the Pennsylvania authorities, with the feds and so forth, but they're arresting them on another jurisdiction's warrant. So that jail where he's brought to, they're just doing pretty much a favor by housing him and holding him there. Could you just talk about, upon being booked in, what goes on and how they assess this guy? I would have asked Connie if she was here, but you're going to have to do it.
That's fine. By the way, I also want to say hi to everybody out here. I see a lot of familiar names here. So hi, everyone. So intake is probably the most important part of a function for a jail when it comes to understanding who they got in their facility, if there's any ailments, if the inmate is sick, have they received any mental health there. Their job is to truly get an understanding of who that inmate is and that history of that inmate. And what's great about that, by the way, from a jail level, is that once they get that information, that's the information we all kind of start out with. So if this person's never been in a prison before or jail before, Monroe County is going to be the first one who is going to be on point with having to get all the information they need to make sure that this intake covers everything. And again, the biggest concerns are going to be the inmate's medical concerns, or the incarcerated person's medical concerns, if they have any mental health concerns. They know this person is a high profile, so they're going to want to understand where they can place him to make sure that he is placed most safely. Because believe it or not, I don't know if a lot of people may agree with this, but this is the truth. Our job is to protect that inmate. That is our job. That is our function. So during the intake process, we're going to make sure we know everything about them so we can place them in a way that they're safe, but also in a way that we meet all their needs that we're required to do so under their rights.
And I got to say something right off the bat. People, and there's going to be people here that would be like, well, hold on, I got to hit my thing. Oh, well, him, what his needs and his wants and all of this stuff. But a lot of people get confused that what correction officers' duties are and what a jail does and what a prison does. Ed and I have spoken about this so many times, is that you have rights. And when you're being housed and you're being held here, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. He hasn't even been charged with the crimes. He's being held on those outstanding warrants. Okay. It's everything here is alleged, but at the same time, people say, he's there for 4 murder warrants, right? And a burglary warrant as well. Why give him all his wants and needs? But that's part of the job, right?
Yeah, so the big thing is right now is that the I may say gentlemen once in a while, guys, bear with me, because in my line of work, we will use gentlemen, or we try to lean away from any titles that they figure are condescending. That's where the shift is right now. But basically,
convicts. We
don't call them convicts anymore. I think now it's incarcerated persons, at least from where I'm at. So the basic thing right now is when they caught him, it's going to put a lot of attention on Monroe County. So their correctional practices are going to be under the spotlight. So I will guarantee you right now, they're going to be at the best of their game to make sure that everything's taken care of. So, there is no concerns with handling this incarcerated person, because there's someone that said in the chat, and they're 100% correct. Their job is to hold them and not mess that up, and then get him safely over to Idaho. What I mean by that is hand them over to the people that will be coming to pick him up. And that starts literally from the get-go, because the last thing they want is the liability of dropping such a high-profile case. So they don't want this inmate harmed. They want all his needs met. And more importantly, they don't want the inmate to harm themselves either. Right.
Yeah. Again, we look at this process and everyone says, this guy who is now standing, being held and waiting for Idaho to come and extradite him. What is his, what happens? He's a vegan. Does he get his vegan food? You and I talked about this a little bit before we went live. After they assess him and they do all the medical and they, here we see him in this suit, this, we don't like to refer to it as a turtle suit. Connie laughed at me last time when I said that. What is this thing called that he's wearing?
It's a smock or a suicide gown. Basically it's made of material that you can't rip or shred. This way he can't, use the material to go ahead and maybe put it around his neck or cause greater harm. So it's a material that actually you cannot, you shouldn't be able to rip it. I've actually seen it ripped at one point in my career.
And is that standard?
Yeah, that's going to be standard. So here, if I may, so in order for him to be put in a smock like that, he'd have to be put on some constant watch setting. And you could have two. You could have an administrative constant watch, which means that he's not there because mental health deems he's a threat to himself. He could be there because administration believes that there are certain circumstances that could make him a threat to himself. So in this case here, the high profile of his crime, what he's done. Now, I know he did not escape. He did not intentionally run, that's what they're saying, but it still could be seen as you had a gentleman that went across state lines. So usually there's a protocol for that where, just in case, since we caught the guy and he had a taste of freedom, let's go ahead and put him on a watch. But usually the watch is usually done, there's twofold. You have the constant watch, which mental health would do. So basically the inmate will say something that mental health believes, this person could be a threat. Now, even though they went through these situations, mental health would say, did the person actually clearly say that they were going to hurt themselves? And they would say, no, this inmate never said that. Okay, fine. Well, at that point here, mental health, there's no reason to put him on that. He's aware of his situation. He's aware of the consequences, and he's ready to move forward. Administration may come up and say, yeah, we get all that mental health, but you know what? We're not dropping the ball on this. I don't care what he said. I don't care if he's, telling the truth or not. We're going to universal precaution, and we're just going to go ahead because it is a liability. We're going to put him on constant watch, at least for the first 72 hours, just to make sure he's adjusted to the situation. So this could be a partnership between mental health or administration, or it could be mental health may not think he needs it. Administration steps up, or, there could be many reasons why, but I definitely believe he needs to be on it. Because one, the liability of something was to happen to him, but also the circumstances that led him to be arrested and put in the jail.
Yeah, we weren't surprised about that when we saw him in the, in that, and when they mentioned he was going to be in protective custody. Ed, we talked so much about the evidence and all that stuff at his apartment and in his office. I think we didn't cover it yesterday. We didn't talk about it, but they came out of his location with multiple boxes and multiple items. They were in there 12 hours. I wanted to touch with you on evidence quickly, and then we'll jump back into Anthony and ask about the diet and so forth and what will happen with him. But was that was that surprising to you that they were in for 12 hours inside that location in Pullman when we were looking at that yesterday?
No, not at all. Especially if there were, like I saw, they were seizing computers. All right. So now they don't only take the computer, but they take everything the computer's attached to, a scanner, a printer, anything like that. And so it's a meticulous process where you have to label all connections from the back of the PC to the hard devices that it's attached to, and then make sure that all of these things are labeled and documented and photographed, because that's all going to be reassembled in a forensic computer lab So they have to be able to reassemble it just the way it was found. They have to be careful when taking power supplies off, and so that they're not changing any settings or any rewriting or writing over anything. So it requires some specialty from some computer forensics. In addition, if you're searching for hairs and fibers, remember the Lacard's exchange principle. So when this murderer left that crime scene, he left with bits and pieces of his victims and bits and pieces of the scene on him. And then he took those bits and pieces and transferred it to his vehicle. And then he transferred from the vehicle to his apartment and or his office. So, you know, if you're looking for tiny trace evidence like hairs and fibers, and you're using alternate light sources and things like that, these things are methodical and take time. And there's no doubt they did scans there too, 3D laser scans of the apartment and the office and possibly the vehicle. So all of this stuff is going to take a lot of time. And so you're looking for these minute traces of evidence, forensic evidence, whether it's DNA evidence, hair and fiber, any other type of trace transfer evidence, your software, your computers, your digital, your electronic evidence, even your documents, your written notes, your reading materials, your phones, all of this, even PlayStations.
I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this quickly, because I'm just thinking about it. Because of his knowledge and the curriculum and everything that he was studying, right? He was studying criminology and masters of arts and so forth. Do you think in the 6 or 7 weeks that he was a free man, that he had the wherewithal or the smarts to go and try to clean up that vehicle? And if he did, how successful could he be taking it to get it detailed? Or, I'm asking you because I know you know the answers to these questions.
Yeah, no, it's not unheard of, and it's definitely possible to do a pretty decent job of cleaning up this car, but you're not going to get everything, okay? And especially if it's DNA material, all right? And I'm not going to get into the ways that it can be killed inside of a vehicle, but there are methods that can do that. I'm not sure that he had access to those methods. And just simply shampooing and the carpets, the seats and things of that nature isn't going to do it.
Right. Somebody in the chat said, "What if he had luminol?" We talked about this, and several of the news outlets talked about it. To have that bloody of a crime scene, it was almost impossible to walk out of there without any blood on you, right? So he's now walking out of there, and from what we can gather now, that white Hyundai Elantra, we find out it's a 2015, and that's good news because of the infotainment system and so forth, and things upgraded from the 2011 to 2013 that they were saying they were looking for. But he's getting into that car and then driving out of there, perhaps. And this is just a theory, right?
That's another thing too. I mean, his college definitely has criminology and forensics program. Well, did he have access to the forensic lab? Did he have access to the chemicals in the forensic lab? Did he have access to PPE from the forensic labs, right? And things of that nature? I mean, could he be performing his own? As I can see in the chat, could he be performing his own luminol checks on the inside of his car? Could he be borrowed an alternate light source from the forensic lab at the college to search the interior of his car and his apartment, for that matter, and his clothing for foreign hairs and fibers and genetic material?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that there's 6 going on 7 weeks of time before he was apprehended. And that's what I always worry about. But let's just hope and pray that he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's. I want to play this because at the end of this, it's going to show the evidence and all of the things that they're, not the evidence, but what they're taking out of this location.
Late, and he was always showing up with a cup of coffee in hand. He seemed like he was more exhausted going into the tail end of the term.
Right after Kohberger's arrest, Newsnation on hand as authorities seized a computer and
there you go, Ed.
A lot of new evidence from his apartment at the WSU graduate housing complex. Neighbors say he was indeed very chatty.
Was pretty.
After Kohberger's arrest, Newsnation on.
So there's a big, looks like a big storage container, like something you would put clothing in or whatever. She's walking out and she's gloved up.
Hand as authorities seized a
And then the computer, that looks like a gaming computer, and a lot of different boxes. And I'm sure they didn't get it all in this piece here.
You'd have to look at all his textbooks and all his private readings. You see if he wrote any notes in there. We know that he was on Reddit. We know that he was doing those surveys with criminals. You'd have to find all of that material and see what handwritten notes that he has attached to those surveys that he was conducting with these prisoners.
Right.
You'd have to do a deep dive into the hard drive to see what he was researching. You need to do the Google searches. You see, look up all his Word documents and all these things that are in his computer, telling us, what he was investigating, what he was researching and conducting analysis on.
Right. And, there's always these possibilities because everybody, I see the chat, people are saying, oh, do you think that he laid in wait, that he stalked them? These young folks, and he's 28 years old. So he was, 8 years older than two of them and 7 years older than the other two. These men and women are constantly back and forth on social media with DMs. The people always say, oh, I open up my DMs and there's tons of them. I get tons of them. But what I'm saying is these younger people, it's all this, casual conversation back and forth. So those computers seized there are that's a great sign. Phone records and all of his social media footprint and their social media footprints, because, they could have conversations like, oh, this creepy guy was talking to me, or this one was talking to me, and this one said this. And then we can't forget about the vape shop, Ed, where there was the manager saying that she was talking about, or her friend was talking about the stalker. Maddie was talking about that Kaylee had a stalker. Mm-hmm. So these are important things. But before we get too far into this thing, let's get Anthony back on. I want to talk about his life inside while waiting for the extradition. And this could be a week. They could be right there on Tuesday, Idaho. The feds, they could put him on an airplane. They could drive him. We're not going to get into that. They're not going to talk about it for safety reasons. But the main thing is getting him back to Idaho, 2,500 miles in the safest, quickest fashion. To me, I would say put him on a plane, put him on Con Air, put him on whatever, chartered plane that they can get if it's not going to be a commercial airline. Get him back to Idaho as soon as possible. But we don't know, what's going to happen. But they have probably under the law up to 30 days to get him back there. But I would sense that Idaho wants his butt back there quick. So let's add Anthony back in. Anthony, thanks for hanging out while we did a little forensics talk, because we can't have a conversation without talking about forensics. There's so much involved in this case. But could you walk our audience through this guy? There's been a report that he wouldn't even use a pan or a pot, right, Ed? Mm-hmm. That had meat cooked in it prior. Yeah. Will he get that? Will the jail buy new pots and pans for this perp? I can call him a perp. You probably won't, but I can call him a perp.
Well, so I just wanted to answer one. Idaho does have the death penalty. Mm-hmm. I think they kicked it back in somewhere in the mid 70s. And I think how they practice it or how they follow through with that is probably going to be lethal injection, which is still a complicated issue right now because not a lot of drug companies want to be connected to lethal injection. So yes, we are going to have to honor the vegan meal, just like we'd have to honor a kosher meal. So here's what it is, guys. To some extent, what inmates need to eat as opposed to what they prefer to eat, we have to meet those needs. So if it's a religious concern, because sometimes we have a lot of inmates that want those kosher meals, for some reason, they believe those meals are better meals. That would get approved most likely through overall, basically through administration. But the initial part of it should be chaplaincy when it comes to the religious meals. A vegan meal, I mean, I know some people may think that's a preferred diet. It may not be. I believe that is something that the jail is going to have to provide. And that could be done either with medical, trying to get an understanding of his diet, and then maybe writing some letter over to administration for the final approval. And then that will be sent over to food service to make sure they're in compliance with what the inmate needs. And again, I will be honest with you right now, if you are Monroe County and you know all eyes are on you, the last thing you want to do is to have this inmate go on hunger strike because they're not getting a vegan meal. give him the vegan meal and let's get him out.
And it's about liability too, right? Ed and I know this. Nobody wants to see somebody either A, kill themselves, or B, get killed by an inmate, because it's a black eye for you. So the bottom line is that everybody has to realize that these authorities are taxed with delivering him off to Idaho and the feds in one piece, right?
Yeah.
Hence this this getup, right? This getup isn't given to him because we want him to look silly. It's for his own personal safety, so he's alive to stand trial, to answer for the charges that are brought forth against him. Correct? Ed?
Right. Yeah. So what's unique, guys, and maybe this would be a good way to express this thought here. Our job in the correction system is to do things objectively. So fair, firm, and consistent is usually the words we throw around. And that's because we have to see the person before we actually see what they've done. Before we, basically what I mean by that is safety and security, don't get me wrong. Their number one priority is they are that fail safe. So they're going to look at things a little bit differently. Corrections is going to look at what they've done, but still find a way to objectively treat them fairly. The facility itself still has to take note of that you're dealing with a human being. At the end of the day, regardless of what they've done, our job is to treat them as such. So when it comes to their certain rights, like having a vegan meal, that's going to be something that we are going to have to fulfill, because that falls in line with what most people would consider that inmate's rights. And again, you never know who will come up and defend this inmate on those certain rights. So it's just not any attention you would want on the facility. Now, mind you guys, that all avenues is always going to be about safety and security. Don't get me wrong. But in order to keep things objective, we also have to balance that with the fact that we are dealing with a human being, regardless of what they've done, and we have to meet the needs of that person as a human being.
Absolutely. 100%. I get it. Emily, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. In the grand scheme of all the info law enforcement had to dig through, I'm so impressed with Moscow PD, the Idaho State Police, and the FBI. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Emily is the very first channel member here on Crime Time with DutyRon. She, as soon as I enabled channel memberships, became a channel member. So thank you for that, Emily. Ed, I know you're chomping at the bit. You got anything for our guest, Ed?
No, on a different vein, I found it, I'm hearing all kinds of things out there, all kinds of chatter on the news and so forth, that it's reporting that they had crime scene DNA that came back negative at CODIS. So they did genealogy workup on it, and they got a name, maybe a family member or somebody who did a genealogy search. And then I think I'm hearing that they cross-referenced that against the 22,000 Hyundais that they were looking at, and found a registered Hyundai in Washington State with that name.
Right.
Last name, and then started connecting the dots.
And that's unbelievable work. Who do you think handled that? Because it's the genealogy is that private companies, right? So do you think the feds would take the lead on that? Because
well, I definitely think the DNA workup from the crime scene samples submitted was the Idaho State Lab, and then the information and the FBI. I think the FBI ran with the rest of it. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm looking at the chat, which I try not to get sidetracked with the chat, but look at this one, Ed. Hold on. Southern Sass. She's mad. Ed, can you answer my question, Ed?
What was the question?
With a blue heart and a hand, like she's like Southern Sass. She's throwing some love with blue hearts. We didn't see it, so throw it up again and we'll take a peek at it. And for those of you who have questions and you want them answered, the last 15 minutes, we're going to do question and answer. So please hang on to your questions to the end of it. But yeah, the genealogy is fascinating to me, because that in itself is a great, unbelievable tool in law enforcement. And up until Friday, we really had a big fat donut. We had ungats as far as we were concerned, that, Idaho and FBI, the Moscow police, they were still asking for help. But what the great part about what they did is they held everything close to the vest, and they knew what where they were going, and they knew that things were developing, but they couldn't jump up and down and say, "Oh, we got them." They had to keep it quiet, and that's how it happens. That's how these things happen. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that have some humble pie to eat when they were calling them, this, that, and the other. And listen, when we were seeing things, Ed, we were seeing things from that crime scene that were not looking copacetic, so to speak. We spoke about it, because what are we supposed to do? Just put that in our pocket and say, "Oh, we're not going to talk about that. It doesn't look right."
We call the balls and strikes. That's the way it runs. And then anybody see that question? I'm still looking for that question. I want to answer it. I don't want her to be mad at us. The next thing you know, if she's a Southern lass, she'll be saying,
"Yeah,
bless your heart."
But it was the first thing I saw when I looked at the chat was her.
She said, she asked, "Do you think he killed before, or could this be the beginning of a serial killer?"
That's what I said in the previous episode, folks, that we need to say he's very new to that community out there. Okay. So what really needs to do is start looking in the Pennsylvania area where he got his master's degree and his bachelor's degree, in that area. See if there's any unsolved crimes that kind of have this MO with the knife attack with a fixed blade instrument. So, you have to look at that. He's only here a semester. He's only here in Washington for the first semester of his PhD program.
Yeah.
So start looking around. See if there were any crimes out there that didn't make sense or were unusual for the community in those areas, and see where he was during these events.
Quick, Anthony, before you go, I want to say, before you go with what your thought is, Dr. Ed Moskowitz, thank you for the $20 super chat. He says, Ed and Julie says, Happy New Year, excellent education, Anthony and DutyRon and Ed. Thank you, Ed and Dr. Ed and Julie. We love you. Pocatello, Idaho, our best doctor in the state of Idaho. So thank you. James ML says, genealogy, familiar genealogy is phenomenal. I agree, James. Go ahead, Ant. We saw Russ, our buddy Russ.
Yeah, Russ is on there. That's my boy. Hey guys, so real quick, I've worked around very violent people. Recently, I've worked around people that what you would consider serial killers. Definitely some people they've done some Netflix films about. I would say that usually when someone does something like that, that's towards the end, or maybe that was their last hurrah, because again, it looked like it was sloppy, and it was like kind of like Ted Bundy when he took out all the college girls in the dorms. It's the last hurrah, So basically, I figure if the person was new, it wouldn't be as. It wouldn't be as I'm losing the word here, but it wouldn't be as much as that. Like I think that's more of someone that is just getting it out of their system, or
you're talking multiple murders here.
Yeah. Like Ted Bundy, towards the end of his time, he went to the college dorm and he knew he was going to get caught, so he went all out. I think. Yeah, go ahead.
What you're saying is you usually don't start off with a quadruple.
Yeah, because the funny thing is most of the time it's testing until you basically feel like you never, when these serial killers, from what I hear and what I watch, is that when they do their first kill, it's never, first off, it's sloppy. Sometimes this person gets away, but if they ever do land, it's never what they thought it would be. It's never what they fantasize it to be. So they chase that fantasy, and even in the end, Ted Bundy, he got that last hurrah because he never actually lived up to what that fantasy would be, where he had killing somebody being this ultimate fantasy, and it never met it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, folks, if you're not yet subscribed to Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you will get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, we really appreciate the replay viewers, the folks who moderate for us. I want to just say a special thank you to the mod squad. You guys are great. That's Dawn Marie, Black Rose 11, Alicia B. There's just so many of them out there that do such a great job for us. A couple of folks sent in super chats, and there were some really great questions. And again, I can't help myself. I always got to look at these things because people are saying a lot of great things. Like here, Ed, Retta Winery says familiar DNA testing tests STRs and can only identify parental/child or sibling. They used Wait a minute. Okay. So auto small testing, is that right, Ed, or is that a typo? I can't see it.
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not.
Auto small.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. It might have been something, but what's your thoughts on that comment?
Could you? She said they would go back to it.
Yeah, there it is.
Familial DNA testing test STRs, short tandem repeats, and can only identify parent or child or sibling. I don't know where Rita's going with this, because usually, the crime lab is going to do, PCR, polymerase chain reaction, or STR.
Right.
So for the CODIS database, somehow they got into either a GED match or one of the other providers that do this, that people put their genetic profiles in and found some type of match between someone. I mean, it could have been even him. He could have put his own DNA in there. We don't know if he was doing some kind of research with his own DNA.
Right. But, and also too, a little bit off of this, when we had Barbara on, we had her on twice about this. And Emily, thank you for that super chat. She says, I uploaded my DNA profile to GD match. I told my family, speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm surprised he didn't think
That's
about
it.
That possibility.
Okay. Autosomal. Yes. So they would have to redo the genetic profile from STR or PCR to put it into the genealogy search mode, the form that's required, rather, to do that kind of genealogy search mode.
All right. So there we go. We got to that. Russ is in there. And Anthony, we never got you to, did you get out your thought? Did I got to you on it?
Yeah, we got it. The only thing I was actually gonna mention, I know Russ mentioned something about the Golden State Killer being caught the same way. If this gentleman was sloppy, I mean, I think some of the tests actually go as far as checking. The one gentleman said distant cousins and all this other stuff. I mean, with all the technology now, if the guy believes he's going to get exonerated, I find that very hard to believe. Not with what we have now.
Right. Right. And there's our good friend Timmy Acosta in the chat. He's trying to chime in with some scientific jargon. This is all mumbo jumbo to me. So he says DNA is the term used in genetic genealogy to describe DNA. Yeah, it's just that it was all, I guess, whatever, the way it was typed out.
Was it misspelled, or was it missing a letter?
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just the way I was pronouncing it. I wasn't pronouncing it right.
Yeah, someone said in the chat it dealt with relates to finding distant cousins even.
Yeah, okay. Third cousin removed or something like that.
Maybe we got to get a specialist on here, one of those genealogists, to come in and talk to us about this. Anthony, before we get too deep into the show, I want to ask you about visits. Will Brian get his parents to come and see their son? Will family members be able to come to see him at the county jail awaiting an extradition?
All right, I'm going to say right now, the only visits that he would be allowed probably are legal visits. I would definitely guarantee you that. I also believe that, so we've moved up in technology. Some of the inmates, and I believe PA, some of the counties in PA do have this. Inmates have tablets now where they're able to facilitate visits that go through some centralized approval method during certain times, but I still don't think that would be allowed. Plus, I also think that he's going to be more focused on his case, definitely moving forward. So I know that I think in some of these facilities, the tablets even have LexisNexis, which is basically access to every legal case. So I believe that right now the facility will allow the legal visits 100%. They cannot deny that. I think the focus for that will be on him going to Idaho. I don't think they're going to be focused on his case right now, because I think when he gets to Idaho, he'll probably be assigned somebody, or he'll have to get somebody, because this guy here, the lawyer he has now, is just going to deal with him being exonerated, So I think right now they're going to limit it, and I think rightfully so, to just legal visits and within whatever time the facility can facilitate that.
All right. Ed, you got anything else? I got one more little piece I'm going to play.
Yeah, no, there's a question they keep asking over and over again what I think about the lack of PPE. And I've covered this ad nauseum about the lack of PPE. They should have been wearing PPE. That's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Hey, wait, before you go, Ron, can I just answer one question that the person asked? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So, someone asked, could he get his PhD in prison? I guess when they go to Idaho, so just more of in the future. You really can't stop an inmate from getting education. Sometimes the facility itself could provide it, or we could set them up with a correspondence unit, and we just have to work with the unit that they're in to make sure they have access to either the tablet or the phone, however they got to facilitate the assignment. Sometimes what will happen is the educator will work with the school because they may have a contract or something with the school, and they could proctor the test. They could facilitate any homework that they could pass over to the inmate, but you really can't deny an inmate their education, including inmates that are on death row. So if we don't offer it, like if this facility doesn't offer a PhD program, if the inmate's willing to pay for it on their own, we will do our best to facilitate the needs of that program. So yeah, that was a great question.
Wow.
I thought.
Wow.
Hey, also, folks, don't forget hair and fiber. Well, hairs, if it doesn't have the root, will give you mitochondrial DNA of the suspect, which means the mother's DNA. Okay. So, if they had mitochondrial DNA, then that would be another reason that they would probably go into a genealogical search.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, Ed, I know you're going to get a kick out of this. Somebody said in the chat, and it's gone already because the chat's moving so fast, but somebody said, we know for a fact he's not getting any visitors because some YouTuber went to the prison. I'm just laughing because it's so idiotic that some moron would go and do that or make a phone call to the prison. You think they're going to go, oh, yeah, hold on, let's put him on for you and you could talk to him.
Do you know the procedure for that? So we get a lot of networks that will call and they'll want to talk to the more high profile inmates, just to kind of, if they're doing a documentary or whatnot. I mean, you really can't deny the inmate access to the media. But the one thing we can deny them is they're not supposed to get access on site to film things. So if I had a media that said, hey, we'd like to go in and film your facility, no, that's not going to happen. But if the inmate wants to see you for an interview, you can do that. But you can't. You're going to bring your pencil and take notes because you're not recording any audio. You're not doing any of that. But yeah, that happens a lot. These YouTubers.
Yeah. Whoever called the prison is a moron. But anyways, let's put this on. Emily Combs sends in a $10 super chat and she says, Anthony, is he in his cell all day or mingling with other inmates?
All right, so that's a very good question. I can't see that comment. Do you know who that was so I could acknowledge that?
It was a super chat. Let me just grab it and I'll put it on the screen.
That is a great question, whoever
Emily
did that.
Combs. There it
Emily
is.
Combs, that is a great question. So I could break down how the system works. So protective custody, there's usually two categories. You have protective custody congregate and protective custody non-congregate. So just to kind of break down what that means, protective custody non-congregate would be an inmate that literally is by themselves. They don't have any interaction with any other inmates. Pretty much everything is done through staff, including the delivering of meals, everything. You could have protective custody congregate, which allows the inmate to be around other protective custody inmates, and the inmates that are there to kind of deliver food or whatnot, usually they're approved and filtered. Now, for this inmate, I would go ahead and assume that he's going to be protective custody non-congregate. His activity out of the cell is going to be very, very limited because of the liability if something was to happen.
And supervised, as you said, no jail executive wants to have this guy get killed by either himself or others under their watch.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing. Yep.
Yeah. So, Trevor, thank you so much for the $158 super chat. Happy New Year. Keep up the good work, chaps. I appreciate that, Trevor. Thank you so much for that super chat. Here's a good question for you. I'll put that on the screen. It comes from Christopher Carpenter. Do you want to take that one?
Did Epstein kill himself?
Right.
We did a whole show on that, guys. I mean, that's a whole nother dialogue.
Right. We're not going to get into that here. But thank you for that. I only highlighted because he actually is he does engage with us quite a bit, but usually is not that silly. But thank you for a little bit of a laugh. That was funny. Listen, so there's a couple more questions. So we know he's in protective custody for liability reasons. They want him to stand trial. They want him to either go to Idaho and plead guilty or not guilty. And my good friend, the lawyer, he had a live stream tonight, so I was watching it right before we went live, and his prediction was that he feels that this guy's going to plead not guilty because he's got nothing to lose. He's going to plead not guilty, and he's going to fight this. He's going to make the state of Idaho prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, because what the hell else does he have to lose? He's not going to say, yeah, you got me, I'm guilty. Yeah. So he's going to make them prove themselves, right, Ed? I mean,
like I said, I see so many, comparisons between him and Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
He's going to make them prove their case. He's going to be intimately involved with his lawyer in his defense.
Absolutely. Let's play this little piece that I agree wholeheartedly with that, Ed. And you know what? Any good lawyer is going to tell their client, what do you have to lose? So let's play this little piece. This is, let me see where this is coming from. I always like to give credit. CNN again.
A call to the public. Authorities in need of any information regarding Brian Kohberger.
We still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line.
His DNA and white Hyundai Elantra.
Ed, did you? I mean, I don't find it odd, but I'm just going to ask you: did you find it odd that they want still information about this guy? Because now they're talking about they want to learn about this, about this perp. They want to learn about his past or what he was like. Were you surprised that the chief did that at the press conference? Asked about people to call in, and we want to know more about him.
No, not at all. I think that's dotting their I and crossing their T. You want that information. You need that background.
Yeah, and some people. The reason I asked you that is, and obviously we're not finding it odd, but a lot of people that send in comments on DutyRon.com were like, "Well, why are they still asking for that?" This is another piece to what they need to put together to present their case as well.
You need a whole profile on this individual.
Yeah. All right, let me let this play. It's only a couple of minutes.
Kohberger.
We still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line.
His DNA and white Hyundai Elantra linking him to the case, according to 2 law enforcement sources briefed on the investigation. But more evidence is needed for a successful prosecution.
We are still looking for more information. We're still trying to build that picture, just like we have stated all along. We're putting all the pieces together, and that will help.
Bryan Kohberger.
The 28-year-old graduated in May from DeSales University in Pennsylvania with a master's in criminal justice.
It's someone who has been
University in Pennsylvania.
It's amazing.
Hey, hold on there.
It's amazing, Ed, when you look at this guy. Like some people send in messages to me on my social media. He doesn't look like a murderer. He doesn't look like somebody who would do this.
Well, I don't know about you or anybody else, but this picture here, it doesn't look normal to me. When I crossed the stage and got my diploma,
There's no emotion.
I was all smiles. I was happy as could be.
Yeah.
Okay. When my son did the same thing, I was like, what is this? This guy is stone cold here. There's like no emotion in him whatsoever. You just did something phenomenal. You just finished a graduate degree and you are not happy. You're not smiles. You should be very proud of yourself, and your families and your loved ones are there photographing you and there to honor you. And this is how you get your diploma.
Yeah.
Bryan Kohberger.
The 28-year-old graduated in May from DeSales University in Pennsylvania with a master's in criminal justice.
It's someone who has been delving into
look who it is, Ed.
The internal sanctums of criminal thinking, who is now accused of a particularly horrific crime.
In Reddit post removed after the arrest was made.
This is the post, Ed. Did you get a chance to read this post, Ed? And do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah. Like I said, he took what the FBI profile school does, takes about a 400 questionnaire, and then students going through the FBI behavioral science training program will go into prisons and interview usually lifers that are not going anywhere, and give them this questionnaire to fill out so that they can perform their education on how to become a behavioral profiler. And it's 400 questions, and they asked them all kinds of things. And so he was doing the same thing. Yeah. He was pretty much doing the exact same thing that students going through the FBI's behavioral profile school do. And he was learning from these prisoners, or trying to learn. But I don't think he was satisfied with all that he was learning. I don't think that the information that he gleaned from these perpetrators or inmates gave him what he was looking for.
I think, hey, Ron,
I just want to say quickly, Anthony, I don't mean to cut you off, but Ed, they also said there was a world-renowned doctor that was teaching him, and she was being interrupted and cut off by this guy in her class. So that was interesting. Ant, what were you saying, brother?
I wanted to ask the question. So he's got the criminal justice degree. Then he's got, he's doing the profile and stuff. I mean, could this be all used as intent that he's trying to understand maybe how to go around the system? So he's not taking it to learn the system. He's probably taking all this stuff to circumvent the system. And if this is well thought out by a good lawyer, can they start the process literally from getting the degree all the way down to taking the profile, stuff like that? Because I actually believe he already started this. He wasn't happy that he got that degree. There was no emotion behind it. So maybe the degree is just to serve a purpose. Let me figure out what I can about the criminal justice system so I can circumvent it, so I can do what I'm planning on doing.
That's why it's important to understand his background. What did he tell his family about what he was going to do with his life after he got these degrees? Where was he going with these degrees? What kind of work was he planning to do? Yeah. That's why it's also important to look at any writings that he has produced. Okay, after doing these researches, what was he writing? Did he have a journal? What was he writing in his journals? What was his thought process? Where was he going with all of this research?
And this is the second step in the investigation. Once you have somebody in custody, now you have to learn about his psyche, and you got to get into the mindset of this person. Schmitty sends in a $10 super chat. This is directed to you. How quickly is one's info entered into CODIS? Similar MO in my layman's knowledge. A couple was stabbed in their sleep in Oregon. The perp has not been captured. Wouldn't they match him to similar MOs? That's for you, Ed.
Well, as soon as the lab has the genetic profile that matches the needs for CODIS, it gets entered into CODIS by, typically there's one person assigned at the lab that's responsible, or there could be a team responsible for uploading CODIS information. So it normally goes from local jurisdiction to the state jurisdiction to CODIS. Sometimes you can go city directly to CODIS if you have that link. But usually, like it's city, state, CODIS. That's usually the way it goes. And it's as soon as the profile is developed, it usually goes in as soon as possible. There's no once the profile is there, you have to account for its time frame going into CODIS.
Right. Thank you for that, Ed. Sonia Boone says, "Do you think he will be like a Jeffrey Dahmer? He'll have to watch his back." I think he'll definitely have to watch his back when he's anywhere in a facility, in a correctional facility. Jonathan Bassett said, okay, this one's something that we wouldn't put up because it's making an accusation about drug use, and we have no knowledge of that. But thank you for your super chat. Thank you for the super sticker, D. Sam Lamb. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to a couple of the new channel members. Trevor, thank you for becoming a new channel member. We greatly appreciate that. Again, we don't really like to disparage anybody in the comments or in the comment section. If you do anything like that, guests or people that we are speaking about, you'll wind up getting either deleted and or blocked. That's how we do it here, because it's all about respect here. Let me let the rest of this play. And then we'll wrap it up.
Public, a student investigator named Brian Kohberger,
who is now accused of a particularly horrific crime
In Reddit post, removed after the arrest was made public, a student investigator named Brian Kohberger sought participation in a research project associated with the DeSales University study. It was to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. The post said the study sought to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. Most recently, he was a graduate student at Washington State University's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology.
I'm not at all surprised, although really disheartened to find out that this suspect is a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. From the outset, we had to understand that this was an organized killer.
He was studying and living in Pullman, Washington, just a few miles from the crime scene. Police searched his university residence Friday morning.
This is
Let me just stop this for a second because I don't want the super chat to go away. This is for you again, Ed. Do you think his past professor, Kay Ramsland, and current professor in Washington helped lead law enforcement in a profile or to Brian? That's a good question.
Well, if Brian stuck out in their minds as someone to keep an eye on, I could see that happening. I could see these professors coming forward and say, you know, I had a student, I have a student now. In the case of the master's degree, I had a student that struck me as somebody that needs to be watched. You know, right. That's a definite possibility.
And I feel strongly that the federal profilers, the state, and even local investigators will go and interview each and every one of his personal contacts, and that includes his teachers.
Yeah, so, absolutely. They have to interview them to get a better idea of who this individual is.
That's a part of Investigation 101. That's gonna definitely, if they didn't go to them and volunteer it up, they're being questioned and interviewed.
Hey, Ed, I would be very curious what electives he took. Did he take psychology courses along with the criminal justice degree?
I understand he did. Yeah. Also, you know, there's so many parallels here between two Hollywood movies that just jump right at me. I spoke of this earlier, but I didn't speak of the other. One was Murder by Numbers, where you had two gifted high school students who were studying criminology, and they had one of my friend's textbooks on crime scene investigations, and they wanted to commit the perfect homicide. Right. Then the other was Copycat with Sigourney Weaver and what was her name? Hunt. I'm not sure the actress's name. No, I'm not sure. They were San Francisco inspectors, and Sigourney Weaver was a behavioral profiler, and she had caught this serial killer who was played by Harry Connick Jr., who was in prison, who was conversing with a student, a graduate student in criminology, and was asking the student to do certain things for him. And then the student started going out and committing copycats murders of all the famous serial killers throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. And Holly Hunter, yeah, that was it. So, I mean, wow, I was like, man, this is scary.
Yeah, yeah. You and I talked about that, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday. We had this conversation. Let me let the rest of this play, because there's a couple of little good pieces in this.
A smart guy who's obsessed with crime.
Just a few miles from
understand that this was an organized killer.
He was studying and living in Pullman, Washington, just a few miles from the crime scene. Police searched his university residence Friday morning.
This is a smart guy who's obsessed with crime.
He was arrested early Friday morning, giving law enforcement a clear focus for their investigation.
This is not an ending, but rather a new beginning.
Camila Bernal joins us now. So Camila, Washington State University also released a statement tonight. What did they say?
Well, Pam, the chancellor of the university saying they are shaken, that the entire region is shaken by this crime, saying they will long feel the loss for these students and added that she hopes this will be the beginning of a healing process. Now, in terms of the investigation, the university confirming that they helped, in terms of the university police, execute the search warrant. There were two of them, one to his apartment, the other to his office. They were both on campus, so the university saying that they will continue to assist law enforcement in any way possible. And then finally, Pam, confirming that just this month, the suspect finished his first semester. He was a PhD student in the criminal justice program. And again, he finished that semester just this month, Pam.
Interesting.
Well, we have stunning new video that shows just how.
All right. We don't want to see that. Yeah. So there's a lot to this, and there's a lot more that we're going to be learning about. The probable cause affidavit, that's going to be, heavily redacted, in my opinion. I've been pretty close on with all of the stuff that I've been predicting. I feel like there's going to be information in it that they're not going to want to be out. But we are going to get a better look at what led them to this. Hey, there's 4,400 people in the chat here. If you're not yet subscribed, and if you haven't given this a thumbs up, please give it a thumbs up. We have Anthony Gangi from Tier Talk. He is here with us, an expert in the corrections field, and he's giving you guys everything into the look and what this defendant, innocent until proven guilty. I got to keep saying that because I get hell for that all the time. What his life is going to be like up until the point where he gets into Idaho. And let me ask you this, Anthony, because this is going to be obviously for another show. When he gets into Idaho, right? Latah County, Idaho, Moscow Police Department, they got a small little jail there. What are they going to do with this guy? Where is this guy going to go, Ant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for a county, for someone at this high profile, you may want to get him to a maximum security prison. So you would have a county that would work a contract with a state facility out in Idaho. And what they would do is, they'll work a contract with the state of Idaho. And what I would do if I was them is I would send him over to one of the facilities in Idaho, probably their maximum security facility. And if I was, executive staff from that facility, the state facility, I'm putting that inmate in protective custody, non-congregate, at least until they get sentenced. And the reason why is because it's a current event. It's trending. It's going to be all over the news. So you don't know how his crime is going to affect the rest of the population and how they feel towards it, especially if there were kids involved. Yeah. That's a bigger concern there. So technically why this thing is trending, why it's all over the news, every effort has to be made to put this inmate in some form of PC, non-congregate, with limited interaction with, with any inmate there. And also some level of controlled staffing too, because you got to be wary of them as well sometimes.
What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm watching some stuff going on in the chat. People are having a debate about intelligence and smart, and we shouldn't be calling this person. Hey, there's been numerous criminals that test off the chart on IQ. Okay, they can have the highest IQ possible and still be a criminal. Okay, it's not just because you're intelligent or you're smart or you're a Mensa doesn't mean you can't be a criminal.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, don't get too caught up in it. Some of the most intelligent people will wind up killing other human beings.
What was that saying? They used to say there's a fine line between genius and madness.
It's also a matter of how they view people. It doesn't matter how smart you are. They usually, for someone like that, they view a person as an object to a means, to an end. So I mean, that doesn't matter. If you're an object to me, it doesn't matter how smart I am, or to be honest with you, some serial killers actually are very narcissistic to the point where people don't matter. So I actually feel a lot of them could be highly intelligent.
And this guy seems very controlling from some of the actual interviews that I followed. People said that he interrupted his professors several times, and he was always the guy who knew everything. He was the guy that knew everything. Christina Benedict must be one of your fans, one of your good friends, because she says, thank you. So thank you so much, Anthony, for your time.
I love you, Christina.
Your insight. I very much appreciate it. There's one of Anthony's best fans. And yes,
I love you, Chris.
Anthony does have a channel. It's linked in the description down below. Everybody before this video ends. On your way out, go on over and click on it. It's a clickable link. You can take you right over to Tier Talk. You can subscribe and you can watch all of his stuff. I have him as one of my recommended channels down below in my recommended channels list. So Anthony's got about 80,000 recommended channels in his list. I only have 3. So he's one of 3. I'm one of 80,000 in his. So thanks, Anthony. Thanks for that. Let's play this last piece. This is on evidence, Ed, and this is the search warrant out at the house, out at his location. So let's play this because I wanted to get this over with.
Story on Action News tonight is a major break in the murder of 4 Idaho college students. The suspect arrested this morning here in Pennsylvania. Investigators in Moscow, Idaho confirmed this afternoon that Brian Kohberger was detained early today in Chestnut Hill Township in the Pocono Mountains. His arrest comes almost 7 weeks after the 4 20 and 21-year-old University of Idaho students were stabbed as they slept, a crime that set off a wave of fear and fascination across the country. We've got team coverage tonight. Annie McCormick has details on the suspect. But we begin with Action News reporter Chad Pradelli live outside the Poconos home where Kohberger was taken into custody today.
Brian, as you can imagine, people in this sleepy Poconos community are stunned that one of their own has been arrested in connection with this grisly crime. 28-year-old Brian Kohberger was arrested early this morning around 1 at his parents' home in the 100 block of Lamb's Den. FBI and state police moved in and surrounded the home. A broken screen could be seen in the front yard today. The front door appeared damaged. A neighbor says authorities...
That might have been a no-knock, Ed, because...
I wouldn't doubt it. Looking for a quadruple homicide suspect.
Yeah. So we've done many of these no-knocks, and you have to, as per the warrant, you have to actually make your presence known. So you say your presence. You got to say, Idaho State Police or, Pennsylvania State Police search warrant, and then you go in. So, but from what we just saw there, that looks like they were not getting an answer at 1 a.m. when they allegedly went there, and they broke some windows and so forth.
Early this morning around 1 at his parents' home in the 100 block of Lamb's Den. FBI and state police moved in and surrounded the home. A broken screen could be seen in the front yard today. The front door appeared damaged. A neighbor says authorities yelled, "The house is surrounded," before going in and taking the 28-year-old into custody. She asked that we hide her identity.
I saw the cops. I saw the SWAT team. We got a lot of scared, we were scared.
Investigators spent nearly 8 hours searching the home for evidence. Idaho authorities had been looking for a white Elantra in connection with the murders, and a neighbor tells us one was towed from the home this morning during the raid. That is one key piece of evidence. The other is the knife.
So we are still looking for all pieces of evidence, but we are still looking for the weapon. And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
A tow truck came. They towed the car. We were surprised because we don't know what's going on also with the car.
So when I show you this car that Idaho authorities have been looking for, was that the car?
Yes, that's the car. That's the car because we've seen the owner drive that car so many times.
The neighbor tells us she didn't know Brian Kohberger, but had seen him in and out of the house in recent weeks. She says his parents were a very sweet couple, but kept to themselves. Authorities say Kohberger is a PhD student at Washington State University in Pullman, not far from the University of Idaho campus. Authorities are searching his Washington State apartment. The 4 Idaho students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernadel, Madison Mogan, and Ethan Chapin, were repeatedly stabbed last month inside a home where some of the students lived. Police in Idaho believe they have their man, but did not release motive or details of the crime. They say this investigation is not over and want people to come forward and provide information about Kohberger.
Anyone who knows about this individual to come forward, call the tip line, report anything you know about him to help the investigators.
And Kohberger has a court hearing scheduled for 3 p.m.
All right, that's about it for that report. I don't want to let the rest of it go. Fuzzy Doc says, she sends in a super chat and she says, does anybody know if the parents were home when the search warrant was executed? I believe that the father was home, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure because I did try to find any reports on that, and I found one in writing. I think it was in People. They reported that the father was home, and that's all that they said. So, but I'm not 100% on that, so don't hold me to it. But thank you for the $10 super chat. Ed, you see anything in the chat? Because you're like a cyborg. You scan the chat. Do you see anything of interest?
No. I think I covered everything that I did see.
All right, great. Hey, listen, again, I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us. I wanted to look at the chat to see if there was any questions related to corrections side for Anthony, because I promised you guys I would look at the chat. How important is the knife piece, Ed, while we're waiting for the chat to come in? And I hate to put you always on the spot.
No, I mean, it's always best to have the murder weapon. But does that mean you need it? No, you don't need it for the prosecution. If all the evidence, if you have an overwhelming, substantial amount of forensic evidence that puts him there, he can't explain what he's doing there. Can't explain. Like I said, it's important to understand the type of DNA evidence and its connection to the scene. Okay, is it blood DNA? Is it blood found on the bedding above the victims? Is it commingled with the victims? All of this is very important to understand, because, you know, you can say, oh, it's a party house. He might have been there before, but he doesn't seem to be the party type, but, you know, he can probably make that. But then you would have to interview all these people and check his cell phone records and so forth and so on. So we have to understand how this evidence connects him there, what his connection with social media is and these girls. All of that is going to get vetted. All right. So they're going to link him to them.
Yeah.
And they're going to get a good solid case. In my belief is they're going to have a great case to bring against him in court.
And I want to add a little bit to yours. I want to piggyback on what you just said there, Ed, because I really feel strongly that for a district attorney to write up the 4 murder first degree arrest warrants and go before a judge, they had to have really a lot of a substantial amount of evidence to have that probable cause to get those search warrants, because judges don't just give those out like candy. They don't just say, oh, Mr. Prosecutor, thank you for coming. I'll sign it. Whatever it is, they look this stuff over. So I think that they already have a great amount of evidence against this perpetrator, this defendant, innocent until proven guilty. Again, that's the 6th time I said it in this live stream. And now going forward, there'll be more and more, and they're going to continue to collect evidence till the sun comes down. Ed, before we leave, I got to bring back, and you're going to kill me for this, but why were they shutting down that crime scene and sending the clean team there, and then they put the brakes on it? Sorry, Ed.
Again, we covered this. The court ordered this to be stopped. So somebody went into court and made an application to a judge to have the cleanup crew stop from cleaning the crime scene up.
Which I would believe that's the DA that would go in. Who else is going to go into the court? The feds?
I mean, at that time, was there a defense attorney? I'm not aware of that. I mean, but somebody did that. But then again, why would the DA have to go to get a court order if the police were the ones that were gave the contract out to this cleanup crew?
Right.
Why couldn't the police just tell them stop?
Right.
Okay. Why did they have to go get a court order? I'd like to find out more detail about how the court got involved.
And the police chief was asked that tonight. I watched the video. I'm not going to put it on. I'm not going to put him on the spot. He was asked that tonight, and he simply answered, and it was our good friend Nancy Liu from Newsnation. She was sitting in his office, and she asked him, why did that happen? And he said it was the court. But there was no clarity. You know, the court.
What court?
Right.
Was it the court in Idaho? Was it the court in Pennsylvania?
He just said.
And how could the court in Pennsylvania order this to occur in Idaho? There wasn't enough information. I want to know more about that. I want to know who got involved, who made the application to the judge, and why the judge stepped in and shut it down.
The reason and people are saying it could have been the defense, which I don't think. I really don't think that, is because he got collared at 1 o'clock on the FOA, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at 1 o'clock in the morning, he's FOA'd. They show up there, like the police chief said, bright and early on Friday morning. and they start. You see the guys with the trucks. You see them setting up. I'm trying to look for that one.
And there's a 3-hour difference between Pennsylvania and Idaho. Is it 3 or 2?
It's 3. It's 3 hours.
Okay.
So, but they pumped the brakes, and I have a feeling that the brakes were pumped, not by the prosecutor himself. Like the prosecutor had to have gone to that judge. The Latah County prosecutor, if it was done there, had to go to the judge and make that application to stop it, right? But he could have, Ed, think about this. He could have been getting advised by the feds or the state investigators. Hey, wait a minute. We have this guy in custody. Let's hold that crime scene just in case.
Right. And it could have been a preemptive defense move on the part of the prosecutor, so the defense can't make a claim that, hey, you didn't give us a shot at looking at that crime scene.
But wait. But the defense in Pennsylvania, think about this, Ed, and I don't like to.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about for the future defense. I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
So the prosecutors might have rethought this and said, "Hey, wait a minute. I don't want any defense attorney to come and say, hey, to try to create reasonable doubt by saying that you didn't allow our investigators into that crime scene, and so we don't know if you missed anything that could have exonerated our client."
Right.
So I mean, it could have been a preemptive thing, but again, there's just not enough information out there to really intelligently speak on this. I'd like to know more of who did what and why.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I have it. I got to play this. I want to play this because I thought she answered a lot of questions. And I know you got to go, Ed, but and if you do have to go, I'll play it because I'm not playing the whole 15 minutes. I'm going to fast forward it towards the end, because at the end is where she asks about this. So let me put this on.
You have children who've gone through college. These could have been your children. I mean, yes. You've been quite emotional about this case. Do you still feel that same raw emotion? Do you feel like you're really fighting this for these young people?
I think we always feel the emotion. I'm a fairly emotional individual. If you've been around me and you get to know me, I am that way because I care, and I care a lot. And a lot of us want to give the right answers and do it right, but it is difficult at times.
So what was it about the case?
Yeah, this is it.
Because we know that it's a solid base. The family becomes a solid base for an officer, and they're the support system, and we want that to be healthy.
So you're saying support for these thousands of tips. What was it about the case that required counseling?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. They are ready to serve our community. And this is now where we
specific that you're looking for
and people's help.
But just like the ask during the Elantra, I mean, is there anything specific that you're looking for about him that would help you build your case?
We are looking at everything, and I've said that from the beginning. We don't know what small tip may come in that somebody may think is totally irrelevant, but we go, that ties something together for us. And what we're asking is people to give us those pieces and let us work through those to see if that's exactly what we need to help further this case.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, so I can't find it, but you have to trust me. She asks him on there why it stopped, and he basically said it was the court, and he didn't specify. So I'll link this article in the description, and you guys can watch it. It's 15 minutes. We don't have enough time. Anthony is back, and let's wrap it up. He's a busy man. He's fielding calls from all over the place. Anthony, again, so we got a lot of information out of you tonight on the correction side, and I want to thank you so much for being here. Yes, this Chief James Fry showed a lot of emotion in that interview. I agree 100%. He showed his human side in this 15 minutes and has done it in the past. There's a lot of humble pie out there that people have to eat when it comes to not just this chief, but the whole case. All of the investigators as a collective team, and the way they reached out to the Idaho State Police immediately, as per the captain. All those are all things that are important that they did do, and that led them to this moment. But Anthony, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank all the people who subscribe to your channel. Please consider, again, going on over. It's linked in the description. Ed Wallace and I are going to follow this case. We're going to stay on it. Ed, I want to get your final words, and then we'll go to our guest.
Okay, folks, you know my final words. Please stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that, brother. Anthony, anything on this case that you would offer with us on the correction side?
No, I actually think you guys are awesome. The audience really adds to the dialogue, and it gives us a chance to go back and research things and learn in the process. So just to be in a part of this and, you know, sharing with the audience, sharing with you guys, being trusted to be put on such a great venue. Again, I leave honored and humbled, and I will, because I know it's requested. Starting next week, we'll be going back to doing our lives. I know it's been a while, so I want to thank you guys again just for sticking by me. So love you guys. I truly do.
Amen. We really appreciate the work that you and all of your fellow correction officers and executives across the nation do day in and day out behind those walls, because I'm telling you, this is a job, and I've seen it from when I worked in the trip team and I went around to all these different agencies and I went to these different jails and prisons. It's not an easy thing, man. It's no joke what these guys and girls deal with on a regular basis. So we thank you for your service and all of the brothers and sisters in the corrections field doing God's work behind a wall. So thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. I want to say thank you to the moderators, the replay viewers, the folks who gave Super Chat, for everybody who is here positively engaging. This is Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. If you're not yet subscribed and given this a thumbs up, please, Ed and I can really do appreciate your engagement, and that thumbs up and the comments down below. Those things really mean a lot to us, and it helps with the algorithm to spread the word about what we're doing here. Again, Happy New Year. Healthy, prosperous, and all of the good things for everybody here across the great nation and the great globe here. So, guys, good night from New York City. I don't know where Anthony is. He could be at some kind of outpost. It looks like he's in, I don't know, maybe, are you in prison right now? Are you working right now, or are you home?
My wife has me locked in the basement.
Yeah, and he's got to do the laundry after he's done.
The laundry.
Do 2 loads of laundry, and we'll see you in the morning. All right, guys, as I like to end these, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these 4 victims' families, Ethan, Zaina, Kaylee, Maddie, and their whole families, and everyone in the Moscow, Idaho community and surroundings that's affected by this loss. Good night from New York City, and we'll see you soon. Peace and love from DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Thank you, Ant.